Christina, you can ignore the EI time. We're checking on the term.
Okay, good readback. And with that, our next check with you is for your go, no-go confirmation.
And Christina, Houston is go for the burn.
Integrity copies.
All right, Christina, and you are correct. Trim limit is 0.1.
Copy, thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston, and we do have confirmation that the team here in the Artemis Flight Control team, or in the Artemis Flight Control room, are go for the perigee raise burn. That burn expected to take place in about 20 minutes from now. There was some additional discussion between the Capcom or capsule communicator here in Mission Control and NASA astronaut Christina Cook, currently on board the Orion spacecraft. They were talking about some of the data that is in the burn pad. Again, that is a plan that is uplinked to the crew ahead of any burn to ensure that the crew and the team here on the ground are on the same page about the specifics of that burn. Currently on your screen, you're seeing a look at the Artemis real-time orbit website, or AROW, A-R-O-W. That website is available to the public on nasa.gov throughout the duration of the mission, and we provide those live views here on our continuous coverage feed when we don't have live camera views from the Orion spacecraft itself. But this view provides the live data and telemetry coming from the Orion spacecraft. So currently the Orion spacecraft is about 43,000 miles from Earth, and then it has about 223,000 miles to go until it gets to the moon. Again, this comes following a liftoff yesterday at 5:35 p.m. Central Time, 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time. The Orion spacecraft lifted off atop that SLS, or Space Launch System rocket, from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Since that liftoff, about 13 hours and 14 minutes ago, the crew has completed a proximity operations, or ProxOps demonstration, after the ICPS, or Interim Cryogenic Propulsion System, separated from the Orion spacecraft. The crew on board the Orion spacecraft used the ICPS as a docking target to practice those manual maneuvers. And then a little bit after that was completed, the crew did enter their sleep period, again about a 4-hour sleep period, before they were awoken about 45 minutes ago to complete the perigee raise burn operations coming up here shortly. Used the ICPS as a docking target to practice those manual maneuvers. And then a little bit after that was completed, the crew did enter their sleep period, again about a 4-hour sleep period, before they were awoken about 45 minutes ago to complete the perigee raise burn operations coming up here shortly. This is Mission Control Houston as the Orion spacecraft and its crew, along with the team here in Mission Control Houston inside the Artemis flight control room, continue to prepare for the upcoming perigee raise burn, slated to take place in about 15 minutes from now. The solar array wings on the Orion spacecraft, or the SAW, are now in position for that burn. The Orion spacecraft has 4 total solar array wings on the service module. Each solar array is made of 3 panels, and the length of each wing is nearly 23 feet long, or about 7 meters long. These 4 solar arrays are used to convert light into electricity, and they can turn on 2 axes to remain aligned with the sun for maximum power. And on that visualization there in the center of your screen, you can see those 4 solar array wings on the Orion spacecraft. These 4 solar arrays are used to convert light into electricity, and they can turn on 2 axes.
Integrity Houston, the solar arrays are in position for the burn.
On your screen, you can see those 4 solar array wings on the Orion spacecraft.
Integrity copies.
Integrity Houston, less than a minute to the burn attitude maneuver.
Okay, we copy that.
And good morning, Jeremy, and also the tank pressures are good for the burn.
Okay, we copy that.
This is Mission Control Houston, again hearing some continued communication from the crew on board the Orion spacecraft. That Orion spacecraft currently in a high Earth orbit, preparing for its perigee raise burn in about 11 minutes from now. The team here in Mission Control Houston calling up to the crew through the Capcom or capsule communicator position, confirming that the Orion spacecraft is in the correct attitude for that burn. The attitude is the orientation or the pointing direction of the spacecraft. and it is determined by 3 different rotational axes known as pitch, roll, and yaw. And it is important to ensure that the spacecraft is in the correct attitude prior to the upcoming perigee raise burn, but also in preparation for any of the burns. Of the spacecraft, and it is determined by 3 different rotational axes known as pitch, roll, and yaw. And it is important to ensure that the spacecraft is in the correct attitude prior to the upcoming perigee raise burn, but also in preparation for any of the burns.
Integrity Houston, we see y'all in the burn attitude.
We see the same.
This is Mission Control Houston. We are about 5 minutes away from the perigee raise burn. That burn expected to last about 1 minute and 4 seconds. We just heard confirmation from the Capcom or capsule communicator here in Mission Control Houston up to NASA astronaut Christina Cook on board the Orion spacecraft, confirming that the Orion spacecraft is in the correct attitude for the upcoming perigee raise burn. And the spacecraft attitude refers to the orientation or the pointing direction of the spacecraft. Houston up to NASA astronaut Christina Cook on board the Orion spacecraft, confirming that the Orion spacecraft is in the correct attitude for the upcoming perigee raise burn. And the spacecraft attitude refers to the orientation or the pointing direction of the spacecraft. And this is Mission Control Houston. We are about 1 minute out from the perigee raise burn. Again, that burn expected to last about 1 minute, and that burn will raise the perigee or the highest point of Orion's orbit. Apologies. raised, the burn will adjust Orion's perigee or the lowest point of its orbit into the correct orbital geometry to set it up for its translator injection or TLI burn. Again, that TLI burn is planned for flight day 2. After the perigee raise burn is completed in just a few moments, the crew will then step in to perform a brief checkout of their emergency communications system on the Deep Space Network. After that checkout is complete, they will then prepare for their sleep period, which will then last about another 4 hours. After the perigee raise burn is completed in just a few moments, the crew will then step in to perform a brief checkout of their emergency communications system on the Deep Space Network. And that perigee raise burn is now underway. Prepare for their sleep period, which will then last about another 4 hours. And there on your screen, you can see the 8 pulse-X engines on the Orion spacecraft. Now this is a visualization of the Orion spacecraft, as we don't currently have live views from the spacecraft itself, but this uses the data and telemetry from the spacecraft. Again, this perigee raise burn expected to last about a minute. Currently, everything is proceeding as planned. On the Orion spacecraft. Now this is a visualization of the Orion spacecraft, as we don't currently have live views from the spacecraft itself. And we do have confirmation that that burn is complete. It was a good burn.
We're tracking a good burn.
Perigee raise burn expected to last about a minute. Currently, everything is proceeding as planned.
And we see the same, and with a bonus trim burn.
And we do have confirmation that that burn is complete. It was a good burn.
We're tracking a good burn.
And we see the same, and with a bonus trim burn.
And you just heard confirmation from NASA astronaut Christina Cook and the Capcom or capsule communicator here on the ground in Mission Control Houston that we did have a good perigee raise burn. That burn lasted about 50 seconds using the 8 pulse-X engines on the Orion spacecraft service module. And you just heard confirmation from NASA astronaut Christina Cook and the Capcom or capsule communicator here on the ground in Mission Control Houston that we did have a good perigee raise burn. And there on your screen you are seeing a live view of the Orion spacecraft from one of its solar array wing cameras, and you can also see another one of the solar array wings on the bottom right hand of your screen from the Orion spacecraft. Again, this live view comes following that perigee raise burn. Of the Orion spacecraft from one of its solar array wing cameras, and you can also see another one of the solar array wings on the bottom right hand of your screen from the Orion spacecraft. Again, this live view comes following that perigee raise burn. And there in the distance, now just going off of the screen, we did see a distant view of the moon following that perigee raise burn coming from that solar array wing camera. Again, the Orion spacecraft is currently about 220,000.
Readings when you're ready.
And good morning, Victor. We'll take those readings.
Off of the screen, we did see a distant view.
Good morning, Mike. You have CO2 2.8, O2 19.0, 68.1 degrees, 14.55 psi.
All right, Victor, we copy all. Really appreciate it.
O2 19. Happy to help. 68.1 degrees, 14.55
All right, Victor, we copy all. Really appreciate it.
avoid burn execution for us, if that's okay, so we can get positioned for the EMERCOM check.
Definitely, Christina. We'll take care of the rest of 23.
Thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston. Over the past few minutes, there have been various communications between the crew on board the Orion spacecraft and the team here in Mission Control Houston. One of the first calls we heard was from NASA astronaut Victor Glover, who was reporting some of the AGA, or Anomaly Gas Analyzer readings. The AGA is a portable laser-based instrument that detects trace contaminants aboard Orion.
EMERCOM checkout, just confirm you are handling step 1 of 21.2.8.
And good morning, Reed. Yes, we are taking care of step 1, and in step 2, the antenna will be number 3.
Copy 3. You are handling step 1 of 21.2.8.
And good morning, Reed. Yes, we are taking care of step 1, and in step 2, the antenna will be number 3.
Copy 3.
And this is Mission Control Houston. The crew is now stepping into their emergency communications checkout using the Deep Space Network. The Deep Space Network is...
And we're picking up in step 4 of EMERCOM checkout on antenna. Well, we'll get to antenna 3 in a second.
Houston copies.
Again, this is Mission Control Houston. That communication there between NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman and the Capcom, or capsule communicator, here in Mission Control Houston, discussing the emergency communications checkout that is currently taking place. Again, that emergency communications checkout is being done connected to the Deep Space Network. The Deep Space Network is NASA's international array of giant radio antennas that support interplanetary spacecraft missions, plus a few that orbit Earth. And this Deep Space Network also provides radar and radio astronomy observations that improve our understanding of the solar system and the larger universe. During this emergency communications checkout, the crew will perform various voice tests of the emergency communications system using the Deep Space Network. This checkout is being done to ensure that if the Orion spacecraft was to lose communications, they would be able to regain communications from Mission Control Houston using this emergency comm system in the event it lost that communications. But again, that's not expected. This is just one of those checkouts that is being performed on the Orion spacecraft before that translunar injection or TLI burn slated for tomorrow. There were some additional checkouts of the spacecraft completed prior to their initial sleep period earlier today. They tested out some of the cabin configurations, the environmental control life support systems, and some of those checkouts will continue into the flight day 2 ahead of that translunar injection burn, just to ensure that the spacecraft is in a good and steady state ahead of its outbound trip to the moon. They tested out some of the cabin configurations, the environmental control life support systems, and some of those checkouts will continue into the flight day 2 ahead of that translunar injection burn, just to ensure that the spacecraft is in a good and steady state ahead of its outbound trip to the moon.
Integrity Houston, I'm calling on OE1. I heard your call down on EMERCOM. We're still configuring uplink. I'm going to attempt to call on EMERCOM on uplink here shortly.
Okay, we are in instruction 26. Do you want us to hold here and leave EMERCOM on? Do not execute 26.
Yes, let's stay here, please. Let's stay here, please.
Hey, Mike, we have you loud and clear on EMERCOM as well. Do you want us to hold here and leave EMERCOM on? Do not execute
26. This is Mission Control Houston, the crew and the team here at Mission Control Houston.
Houston, we have you loud and clear. Okay, copy that. Okay, we're picking up in step 8 of EMERCOM, powering off emergency comm radio.
This is Mission Control Houston, the crew here on the ground, along with the Artemis 2 crew on board the Orion spacecraft, just completed their EMERCOM or emergency communications checkout using the Deep Space Network, and that checkout was successful on both ends. Again, this is just part of a series of checkouts of various different systems on board the Orion spacecraft ahead of the translunar injection burn. That TLI burn is slated to take place in about 12 hours from now, and that burn will send Orion and its crew outbound toward the moon and back. Again, this is just part of a series. Now that the emergency communications checkout is complete, the crew will deconfigure that setup, and then they will step into their pre-sleep period before going to sleep for about 4 more hours. Again, their sleep period today was split into 2 4-hour blocks due to the perigee raise burn.
On S-band.
Checkout is complete.
Reed, we have you loud and clear on 1. How many?
Their pre-sleep period before going to sleep for about 4 more hours.
We have you the same. We just didn't want to let you go without saying the view out window 3 from about 38,000 nautical miles. The entire half of the Earth is spectacular.
I love to hear that so much, Reed. So glad you guys are getting to experience it. I do have 3 quick questions for y'all before we sign off for the rest of the night.
Go with your 3 quick questions, and then I'll give you one more kind of sit-rep update here.
Fabulous. Can you just give us a quick report on the audio quality for EMERCOM in terms of like clarity and pacing and stuff?
It was crystal clear, maybe a little lower volume, but that might have been my fault because I didn't have the volume all the way up on the F7 EMERCOM panel, but it was outstanding.
All right, excellent. Great to hear, Reed. And then my other question is about the cabin temperature. We did raise the shell heaters. It looks like it's gone up a couple of degrees in there. Hopefully that's a little better. The question is, was the coldness more just from the cold air directly coming from the vents, or would you say it was just a general cabin temperature? My other question is about the cabin temperature. We did raise
I'd say it is both. The general cabin temperature is low, and then the spacecraft over by the toilet and the side hatch is noticeably colder than
right, Reed, thanks for the report. And my last one is actually more of a comment than a question. I know we were having a little trouble with the handheld mics and y'all's volume coming down to us. Just wanted to be clear how the mic is set up. It sort of has a front and a back. They look the same, but the microphone side, just under the top of the mic, will have a little black raised nub that you can feel and maybe particularly see. That is the microphone side of the mic. You flip it over 180, it looks the same, but that is the noise canceling side of the mic. So just ensure that you're talking into that side for that. Just under the top of the mic will have a little black raised nub
And Mike,
that you can feel.
that is a great note. We've adjusted by how we hold the mic. I do confirm we are speaking into the mic side. And how has the volume been on this operation? Adjusted by how we hold the mic. I do confirm we are speaking into the mic side. And how has the volume been on this operation?
Great.
Ever since y'all have been awake for this PRB ops, it's been loud and clear. We have no concerns.
That's great. We'll keep with how we're holding it. Speaking of the temperatures, we are going to retrieve our crew suitcases so we can get long sleeves on. We have been using the ones that we have out so far. We're into one of the E lockers. Can you let us know where all of the crew suitcases are? All they say on ours are D and E, and we're wondering if we should open both sides or not.
All right, we're checking.
And Mike, we found Glover Hansen in the E locker so far. So I'm guessing we are going to have to get into D, but let us know. Perhaps it's just on the other side of E.
All right, and yes, got confirmation down here. We do expect you to go into locker D Delta to get the other suitcases.
Okay, we copy that, Mike. And if you have maybe 2 minutes, I'd like to just talk about some photography operations that might feed into the science team.
We do have those 2 minutes, Reed. Let's go.
We're noticing on the GoPros, on video in particular, it's very hard to get the gains to come down. Everything is just very white, bright, and washed out. The iPhones, you have to manually go in and bring the gain down, and even at that, it's very difficult. It's like walking out back at your house and trying to take a picture of the moon. That's what it feels like right now, trying to take a picture of Earth. On the D5 with the window shroud and window 3, D5, long lens, window shroud on window 3. Very easy to maneuver. We're using a 3-frame bracket, and we're getting some outstanding pictures of the Earth. They seem to be pretty crisp, even at 400 millimeters. So on a good first hack, the window shroud with the long lens is a very workable solution. But the more modern cameras are definitely having trouble gaining themselves down. Maybe there's some ideas that can be come up with in the next day or two to help us out on that. That's it. Even at 400 millimeters. So on a good first hack, the window shroud with the long lens.
All right, Reed, we copy all. Appreciate the input there. We'll go take a look at it and see if we can come up with something for you. In addition, we are going to go ahead and lower the cabin fan speed by another 1,000 RPMs, and hopefully this helps with it, and we can reassess in the next morning. All right, Reed, we copy all. Appreciate the input.
Okay, that sounds good. Can you look, do you have the either the ISS tracker, do you have the world map up in there, and can you tell me, the sun is set just west of a continent. I can't tell what continent it is, whether it's South America or Africa. Okay, that sounds
that sunset that you're seeing right now should be right on the Indian continent in India.
Yeah, I just wanted to describe for you guys the beauty that we're seeing. You can actually make out the coastline of the continent. You can make out rivers because of the sun glare. You can see high thunderclouds, and all the while you can see the entire terminator, and you can see the South Pole lit up. It's just phenomenal. And even from this far, you can make out a slight pink hue along the terminator. It is just absolutely phenomenal. You guys look great.
All right, thanks, Christina. Glad it's looking great for you.
And I'm glad we got to do some comm checks with you for real, Mike.
I know, I wouldn't miss it for anything else in this mission, so I made sure, Dr. Love here, I got this emercom shift just for this.
This is Mission Control Houston. We just heard quite a bit of communication there between NASA astronaut Christina Cook, currently on board the Orion spacecraft as part of NASA's Artemis 2 mission.
Overnight support there. We really appreciate it. It's been a good first. Well, it's been 2 orbits of Earth, I guess, and this one's just got a 38,000 mile apogee. We're going to pick up at 261100 pre-sleep checklist, and then we're going to dim the cabin down and get some rest. Thanks for your support.
Yes, great PRB day. Excellent flight day 1, y'all. Get some good rest, and we'll be in touch in a couple hours.
38,000 mile apogee. We're going to pick up. All right, sounds good. Cheers. And then we're going to dim the cabin down and get some rest. Thanks for your support.
Again, this is Mission Control Houston. Again, that chatter between both NASA astronauts Christina Cook and then NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, currently on board the Orion spacecraft as part of the Artemis 2 mission. The Orion spacecraft recently completed a perigee raise burn, and then they completed an emergency communications checkout, and now they are preparing to go back to sleep for a few hours before they prepare to enter Flight Day 2. But during some of that communication, they were talking about the cabin temperature inside the Orion spacecraft, requesting that the temperature be increased if possible. And then they were also discussing some of the views that they are seeing from the windows of the Orion spacecraft, particularly looking back on Earth. It sounds like the view from the Orion spacecraft, about 43,000 miles away from Earth, is quite spectacular, in the words of NASA astronaut Christina Cook. And then they were also in regard to the cabin temperature, that is being worked by the EECOM position here in Mission Control Houston. That stands for Emergency Environmental and Consumables Manager, and they are responsible for the internal thermal control systems, air and water supply, and purification system, and they also manage emergency response. The equivalent of this flight control position in the International Space Station Flight Control Room is known as ETHOS. Again, on your screen you are seeing views from the Artemis Real-Time Orbital website, or AROW. These views are provided when we do not have live views from the Orion spacecraft cameras itself, but it uses the data and telemetry.
Go ahead.
The Artemis Real-Time Orbital website, or AROW.
Hey, Mike, I just commanded the ARS state to sleep. I just want to let you know, in case you guys are doing some manual commanding on those fan speeds, I might have just overridden you with that.
Go ahead.
Astro crew.
No, Reed, we were anticipating you setting the ARS to sleep, so it did not affect the fan. And one last question for you. Is there anything that you want to report to the AMMT before you'll go to bed?
On the technical side, Mike, I'm sure you all are covering it down there. We are getting a lot of SM prop system cautions. We also see on string 2, the string 1 and string 2, some cyan data on the oxidizer pressure, and for a little while overnight I saw the same on the fuel pressure on string 2, manifold 2. Right now, manifold 4 fuel pressure is missing. So we are just seeing some nuances there. That's interesting. We've gotten those CMUS 300 cautions, but I think those are just due to the wrong settings in the system. And other than that, we got a few things. Right now, manifold 4 fuel pressure is missing. So we are just seeing some nuances there. That's interesting. We've got those CMUS 300 cautions, but I think those are just due to the wrong settings in the system. And other than that, we got a few things. Integrity on 1 contact.
Reed, got you loud and clear. Sorry about that. We were just going through a data rate change. Snuck up on us. I copied all the way. You were talking about the cautions, and then I said, other than that, we've got a few things, and then that's where you cut off.
Integrity on 1 contact. Okay, just looking over the SM prop system, there's some missing data from time to time on string 1 and string 2 manifolds on the pressure side, and we see that kind of shifts across different manifolds overnight. And right now, manifold 2 and 4, actually 5, 2, 4, and 5 all show either missing oxidizer pressure or fuel pressure. We've just been watching that. And then cabin temperature is probably the biggest one impacting crew habitability right now. And but honestly, a few other things we would talk to Jeff about on ascent and just some post-MECO items, but none that would be a lean against the AMMT. Pressure, fuel pressure. We've just been watching that. And then cabin temperature is probably the biggest one impacting.
All right, copy all, Reed. And for the cyan that you're seeing on the manifolds, it is tied to these cautions that come up. And so this is why you can see 2, 4, and 5 are cyan, because we've got cautions and alarm with 2, 4, and 5. The data changes a bit when the cautions come in. So we're working on that to get that changed. The cyan that you're seeing on the manifolds, it is tied to these cautions that come up.
All right, Mike, sounds great.
You can see 2, 4, and 5 are cyan because we've got cautions and alarm with 2, 4, and 5. The data. All right, Reed, that's all we have. Y'all have a great night.
You as well. Good night, Earth.
This is Mission Control Houston live in the Artemis Flight Control Room where the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is wrapping up their shift. Their oncoming counterparts for the Orbit 3 team of flight controllers recently joined them on console to complete a brief handover period before that Orbit 3 team takes charge for the next several hours. The crew on board the Orion spacecraft is currently in a pre-sleep period as they are preparing to go back to sleep for about 4 hours to continue their sleep period that had been split in two ahead of the perigee raise burn operations that were completed a little bit ago. Again, that perigee raise burn adjusted Orion's perigee, or the lowest point of its orbit, into the correct orbital geometry to set it up for its translunar injection, or TLI burn, which is planned for flight day 2. That perigee raise burn was about 43 seconds long. The Artemis 2 crew inside the Orion spacecraft is comprised of NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Canadian Space Agency, or CSA, astronaut Jeremy Hansen. They launched atop a Space Launch System rocket inside the Orion spacecraft named Integrity on Wednesday, April 1st at 5:35 p.m. Central, 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Again, that launch took place about 14 hours and 20 minutes ago. And since that time, the crew has since been placed in a high Earth orbit where they will remain until that translunar injection burn takes place on flight day 2. About 3 hours into the mission, the crew then completed their proximity operations demonstration. That ProxOps demo tested Orion's handling systems, which will be used on future missions as Orion will dock with other spacecraft. And so through the proximity operations demonstration, they used the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, or ICPS, as a docking target. So it separated from Orion, and then the crew practiced flying their spacecraft toward and around it as part of that demonstration. And then after that demonstration was complete, the ICPS fired its engines for a disposal burn, and Orion continued on in its high Earth orbit. The crew then had the first part of their sleep period, lasting about 4 hours, again, before they were woken up to complete that perigee raise burn. And with that, and with the Orbit 3 team of flight controllers now coming on console to begin their shift, I will be handing over our live continuous coverage of the Artemis 2 mission to my colleague Nilofer Ramji, who will continue providing updates of Orion and its crew over the next several hours as we continue the Artemis 2 mission. And with that, this is Mission Control Houston. Now coming on console to begin their shift, I will be handing over our live continuous coverage of the Artemis 2 mission to my colleague Nilofer Ramji, who will continue providing updates of Orion and its crew over the next several hours as we continue the Artemis 2 mission. And with that, this is Mission Control Houston.
Houston, integrity for wake time.
Go ahead, Christina.
Houston, integrity for Hey, Mike, looking at the timeline, we would like to ask if it's possible to have our wake-up music
Go
at
ahead,
MET
Christina.
20 hours.
We will make that happen at MET 20 hours.
Hey, Mike, looking at the timeline, we would like to ask if what a guy. Thank you, and good night.
Good night to y'all as well. We will make that happen at MET 20 hours.
What a guy. Thank you, and good night.
Good night to y'all as well. We will make that happen at MET 20 hours. Good night to y'all as well.
Houston, integrity, one go back on wake-up music.
Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, thanks. What is your nominal plan? Like, if we weren't specifying a time, what time would you play the wake-up music? Houston, integrity, one go back.
The plan was to do it at crew wake, so right at the start of your post-sleep.
Yeah, thanks. What is your nominal plan? Like, if we weren't specifying a time, what time would you Okay, great. In that case, if you don't hear from us, we will count on that, and you can consider that good. So tomorrow isn't necessarily changing that norm. It's just to prioritize sleep for this short period.
All right, Christina, Houston copies all.
We weren't specifying a time. What time would you Okay, great. In that case, if you don't hear from us, we will count on that, and you can consider that good. So tomorrow isn't necessarily changing that norm. It's just to prioritize sleep for this short period.
All right, Christina, Houston copies all.